A millionaire CEO falls in love at first sight with the late and clumsy bridesmaid at his friend's wedding. Emily rushed desperately through the hotel hallways, clutching the hem of her dress and trying not to trip in the heels that had seemed like a great choice until now, a veritable death sentence. The plan was simple: arrive early, help with the preparations, and shine as a bridesmaid. But of course, the universe had other ideas today. First, the taxi was late, then a reckless driver nearly ran her over at the hotel entrance. To top it all off, the elevator that would take her straight to the ballroom was packed, forcing her to sprint up the stairs. If there were an award for the clumsiest bridesmaid in history, she would definitely win. Sorry, she mumbled with every bump into bewildered guests. Just a few steps away, Emily could already hear the murmur of guests inside the ballroom, which meant the ceremony was about to start. And then it happened. Bam! She crashed into something solid, or rather, someone. The impact was so strong that her bouquet went flying, her purse hit the floor, and she nearly kissed the expensive hotel carpet. But before she could fully faceplant, strong hands grabbed her by the waist, preventing a full-blown catastrophe. The scent of an expensive cologne filled her senses, and for a fleeting moment, she forgot even her own name. Please tell me I didn't just run over an elderly man, she muttered, trying to regain her balance. I'm definitely not an elderly man, came the deep, slow voice, making her blink a few times before finally looking up at the man holding her waist. Emily nearly choked. What kind of genetic injustice was this? The man in front of her looked like he had stepped straight out of a luxury suit advertisement. Dark hair perfectly styled, piercing blue eyes, and the aura of someone accustomed to being in charge. His expression was a mix of curiosity and amusement. You're late, he remarked. Emily's eyes widened. Great. He was observant, too. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Any other brilliant facts you'd like to share? The corner of his lips lifted slightly, but Emily didn't have time for flirting or for analyzing how ridiculously attractive that smirk was. She tried to step away quickly, but felt a tug on her dress. Looking down in absolute humiliation, she saw that the fabric had gotten caught on her own heel. Oh, fantastic, because tripping alone wasn't enough. Now she was stuck too. The man crouched down without rushing, freeing the fabric with a swift motion. You may now continue your suicide mission, he teased. I was already on my way before you could make your escape, he added. I hope you have life insurance, because at this pace, you won't make it past the buffet. Emily rolled her eyes, grabbed her things off the floor, and took off again, not looking back. But even in the midst of the chaos, his voice lingered in her head. Don't look at him. Don't look at him. Emily kept repeating this mantra to herself as she slipped into place among the bridesmaids. The ceremony had already begun, and the bride, her best friend Clara, was shooting her a death glare. But Emily could only focus on the imposing figure seated among the groomsmen, the man from the collision. He was right there in front of her, watching her again with that assessing gaze. Who is that? She whispered to one of the bridesmaids beside her. Brian Fisher. And why should I know who he is? Because he's one of the richest men in the country and is CEO of one of the world's biggest financial consulting firms. Emily blinked, trying to process the information. Oh, of course, makes perfect sense that a billionaire spends his time saving clumsy bridesmaids in hotel hallways. Her friend stifled a quiet laugh. He's a mystery, cold, calculating, never gets involved with anyone. They say he can end anyone's career with just one phone call. Emily swallowed hard. Great. Not only had she nearly knocked him over, but she had also been rude to him. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. All right, the wedding was happening. She just needed to survive the ceremony, avoid any more disasters, and, most importantly, stop looking at Brian Fisher. Except that when she opened her eyes again, he was still watching her. And he raised an eyebrow as if he knew exactly what she was thinking. A shiver ran down Emily's spine. Something told her this night was just beginning. Emily was never the kind of person who got easily intimidated, but at that moment, sitting among the other bridesmaids and trying to focus on the ceremony, she could feel the weight of that gaze on her, Brian Fisher. She didn't need to look to know he was still watching. She could feel it as if the entire room had faded away, leaving only that intense and enigmatic presence. "You've been playing with your hair for 5 minutes." The bridesmaid next to her pulled her back to reality. Emily immediately stopped, feeling her face heat up. "Have I?" she muttered, glancing in Brian's direction again. "And guess what? He's still looking at you." Emily let out a nervous laugh, taking a sip of her champagne. "You're exaggerating. He's just intriguing." "Intriguing?" Clara chuckled. "That man is one of the most powerful billionaires in the country, and from what people say, he doesn't get involved with anyone. If he's interested in you, it's because he sees something different." Emily shrugged, but she couldn't hide the blush rising to her cheeks. "He just likes analyzing people, that's all. Honestly, I'm just an ordinary architect. There's no reason for someone like him to notice me." Clara sighed and shook her head. "Oh, Emily, you really don't see it, do you?" Before Emily could respond, one of the groomsmen came over to ask Clara for a dance, leaving her alone again. But not for long. "Are you going to keep pretending you haven't noticed we've been looking at each other for hours?" Emily closed her eyes for a second before slowly turning around. Brian was there, standing too close for comfort. "I wasn't looking at you," she said quickly, trying to sound indifferent. Brian tilted his head slightly, studying her with that intense gaze that made her heart race. "You're really bad at lying, aren't you?" Emily crossed her arms and let out a sarcastic laugh. "And are you always like this, or do you just enjoy making people uncomfortable?" The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "I like to observe, to understand how people react. And so far, you've been an interesting surprise." Good for you, she thought, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped in this game he was playing. "Now, if you'll excuse me," she said, trying to step away. But Brian gently took her wrist just enough to stop her. "Dance with me." Emily's eyes widened. "What?" "One dance, that's all." She glanced at the dance floor where couples were already moving to the soft music, then turned back to him. "And what if I say no?" "I'd say you're lying again." Emily bit her lower lip, fighting the smile threatening to appear. "You're unbearably arrogant, you know that?" Brian took a step back and extended his hand. "And yet you're still here, considering my offer." Taking a deep breath, she thought, what harm could it do? She placed her hand in his as Brian led her to the dance floor. It felt like the world around them had disappeared. His arms wrapped around her waist with quiet confidence, while his firm hand held hers. "You've done this before," Emily commented, trying to ignore their closeness. "A few times, but not like this." She lifted her eyes, meeting his up close. "And what's different this time?" Brian studied her for a moment before answering. "You." A shiver ran through Emily's skin. The room was full, but in that moment, it felt like only the two of them existed. For the first time that night, she let herself stop avoiding his gaze, because deep down, she knew something was happening here, something she couldn't ignore, and maybe she didn't even want to. Emily wasn't sure what was happening. Well, she knew she was dancing with Brian Fisher, the most reserved, intimidating, and apparently persistent man she'd ever met. But at the same time, she didn't understand why it felt so natural. The ballroom was packed, but everything around them blurred as he led her across the floor with effortless precision. She had never realized how much she liked dancing until that moment, or maybe it was just the fact that Brian seemed to know exactly how to hold her hand, how to touch her waist, how to make every move feel light and effortless. "You're surprised." His deep voice resonated near her ear, sending a shiver down her spine. "Should I be? You didn't expect me to know how to dance." Emily narrowed her eyes at him. "No, I didn't. But I guess it makes sense. I bet you learned this the same way you learned everything else in life, because you needed to keep up appearances." Brian smirked, a mysterious glint in his eyes. "Are you always this direct?" "Only when I'm curious." "Then tell me, Emily, what else makes you curious?" Emily opened her mouth to respond, but his gaze threw her off balance for a second, and she forgot what she was going to say. "That's not fair," she finally said. "You distract me with those eyes and expect me to form a coherent sentence." Brian let out a low chuckle. "It's not my fault you get distracted so easily." She sighed and decided to step away, but as soon as she took a step back, Brian caught her hand. "Already running away?" "I don't run away," she replied, raising an eyebrow. He studied her for a moment, then said, "Prove it. Meet me for coffee tomorrow." Emily hesitated. The idea of seeing Brian again the next day was tempting, but also risky. Luckily for her, the music ended right at that moment, and she slowly stepped away as if nothing had happened. Brian just stood there, watching her with a smile. "See you around," he said. She hesitated for a second, then gave a small smile. "See you around, Mr. Fisher." But as she walked away, she had a feeling this wouldn't be their last conversation. The wedding was still lively, but Emily felt that something inside her had changed after that conversation with Brian Fisher. Something she couldn't quite define, but that made her heart beat a little faster than usual. As she walked back to the bridesmaid's table and picked up a glass of champagne, she tried to ignore the fact that just a few feet away, Brian was still watching her. Clara appeared beside her with a teasing smile. "I saw you and the mysterious groomsman had an interesting moment at the bar." Emily rolled her eyes. "It was just casual conversation. Nothing special." "Nothing special?" Clara raised an eyebrow. "That man couldn't take his eyes off you during the ceremony, and now, even from across the room, he's still looking." Emily let out a nervous laugh and took a sip of her drink. "You're exaggerating. He's just intriguing." "Intriguing," Clara chuckled. "That man is one of the most powerful billionaires in the country, and from what people say, he doesn't get involved with anyone. If he's interested in you, it's because he sees something different. Emily shrugged, but she couldn't hide the blush rising to her cheeks. "He just likes analyzing people, that's all. Honestly, I'm just an ordinary architect. There's no reason for someone like him to notice me." "Oh, Emily. You really don't see it, do you?" Clara's words hung in the air as Emily tried to shake off the feeling of being watched. It was just a wedding, just a night among friends, and yet everything felt much more complicated now. The wedding reception was in full swing, the ballroom glowing with golden lights as soft music filled the air. Guests moved between elegantly decorated tables while waiters carried trays of champagne glasses. Emily was determined to stay focused, helping Clara, ensuring the bride was okay, and most importantly, avoiding any more embarrassing moments. But, as always, the universe seemed to have different plans. As she reached for a glass of wine from a waiter's tray, she turned too quickly and collided with something solid once again. Time froze as the dark liquid splashed across the pristine fabric of a black suit. Emily held her breath, watching the disaster unfold in slow motion as the red stain spread. She looked up in horror, meeting Brian Fisher's blue eyes staring back at her. "Tell me this didn't just happen," she whispered, still holding the empty glass like it was a lifeline. Brian glanced down at his shirt, then back at her, his expression unreadable. "Well, it did." Emily swallowed hard. "I'll grab a napkin." "No, wait, I can clean it." Before she could finish, he calmly removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. "Relax. It's just wine." She blinked in surprise. "You're not going to sue me or throw me out of the party?" The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Not yet. But if you'd like to make it up to me, you could join me at the bar." Emily blinked again, caught off guard. Was that an invitation? More like an attempt at one. It depended on her answer. Glancing around for an escape, she realized that despite everything, there was something about him that intrigued her. Maybe it was the calm confidence in his voice, or the way his gaze seemed to study her with quiet interest. Or maybe it was just sheer curiosity. "Okay, but I get to choose the drinks," she replied, surprising herself with her boldness. Brian nodded toward the bar. "Surprise me." The ballroom's bar was luxurious but quiet, with only a few guests seated at the counter, making the space feel more intimate. Emily settled onto one of the high stools and crossed her arms, contemplating her order. "I should order something ridiculously expensive just to see your reaction." Brian tilted his head, amusement dancing in his eyes. "You think I'd care about the price of a drink?" "That's exactly why it would be fun," she chuckled, feeling a small thrill at his laughter. It was a rare sight, and it sent a shiver down her spine. The bartender approached, and Emily confidently placed her order for 2 shots of whiskey. Brian raised an eyebrow. "Impressive." She shrugged. "Did you think I'd order a fruit cocktail?" "I think you like to surprise people." The whiskey arrived, and Emily picked up her glass, studying it for a moment. So, Brian Fisher, tell me. She turned to him with a small smile playing on her lips. Why is a high-powered CEO at a wedding that clearly doesn't fit his reserved style? He swirled his drink before answering. Because I'm the groom's best man. And because your social life consists of boring corporate events. Emily laughed. Maybe. But what about you? I'm the bridesmaid of honor, he replied, which means I'm here out of duty, not choice. Yet you seem to be enjoying yourself. She took a sip of her whiskey, feeling the warmth slide down her throat. Well, the night got a lot more interesting after I spilled wine on the guest of honor and almost knocked him over in the hallway. Emily rolled her eyes. You're never going to let that go, are you? Probably not. They fell into a comfortable silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with something unspoken, something lingering between them that was growing slowly. Emily looked away, pretending to focus on her drink. So, do you always look at people like that? Like what? Like you're trying to figure them out. Brian smirked. Only when I think it's worth the effort. Emily's heart skipped a beat. What was happening here? She took a deep breath and downed the rest of her whiskey in one go. This was fun, but I have to get back to the bride. Brian didn't try to stop her. He just watched as she stood up, his gaze still fixed on her. See you around, Emily. She hesitated for a second, then gave a small smile. See you around, Mr. Fisher. But as she walked away, she felt a sense that this wouldn't be their last conversation. The wedding was still lively, but Emily sensed that something inside her had shifted after her interaction with Brian Fisher, something she couldn't quite define, but that made her heart beat a little faster than usual. She returned to the bridesmaids' table and picked up a glass of champagne, trying to ignore the fact that just a few feet away, Brian was still watching her. Clara appeared beside her with a teasing smile. I saw you and the mysterious groomsman had quite the moment at the bar. Emily rolled her eyes, trying to downplay it. It was just casual conversation, nothing special. Nothing special? Clara raised an eyebrow. That man couldn't take his eyes off you during the ceremony, and even now, from across the room, he's still looking. Emily let out a nervous laugh and took a sip of her drink, trying to brush it off. You're exaggerating. He's just intriguing. Intriguing? Patraking? Clara chuckled, shaking her head. That man is one of the most powerful billionaires in the country. If he's interested in you, it's because he sees something different. Emily shrugged, feeling the blush rise to her cheeks again. He just likes analyzing people, that's all. Honestly, I'm just an ordinary architect. There's no reason for someone like him to notice me. Oh, Emily, you really don't see it, do you? Clara's teasing tone lingered in the back of her mind as the night continued, and she couldn't shake the feeling that everything had just gotten a lot more complicated. As the night unfolded, Emily found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions and unexpected encounters. The music played softly in the background, and the laughter of guests filled the air, but all she could think about were the moments she had shared with Brian. Every glance, every casual touch seemed to linger in her mind, creating a tension that was both thrilling and terrifying. After the dance, Emily tried to focus on her responsibilities as a bridesmaid, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Brian. She caught glimpses of him across the room, talking to other guests, his charming smile and captivating presence making it hard for her to concentrate. She felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. The way he looked at her made her heart race, and she couldn't dismiss the feeling that there was something more between them. As the reception progressed, Emily found herself in the middle of a group of bridesmaids, but her mind was elsewhere. You're awfully quiet, Emily, one of the bridesmaids remarked, nudging her playfully. What's going on in that head of yours? Emily forced a smile, trying to shake off her distraction. Oh, nothing. Just trying to make sure Clara has everything she needs. Her friend raised an eyebrow knowingly. Right, sure. We all saw how you were looking at Brian. Looking at him? Emily feigned innocence, but her cheeks flushed at the thought. I was just what? He's handsome and successful. It's hard not to notice, her friend teased. You should go for it. What's the worst that could happen? Emily shook her head, trying to brush off the suggestion. He's a billionaire CEO. I'm just an architect. It's not like you'd be interested in someone like me. But as she said those words, a part of her couldn't help but wonder if there was more to it. Every time she thought about Brian, a thrill of anticipation shot through her. There was something about him that drew her in, something that made her want to take a chance. Later in the evening, as the wedding cake was being cut and the festivities continued, Emily found herself standing by the bar, needing a moment to breathe. She stirred her drink absent-mindedly, lost in thought when she felt a familiar presence beside her. "Mind if I join you?" Brian's voice was smooth and inviting, sending a rush of warmth through her. "Not at all," she replied, trying to sound casual, though her heart raced at his proximity. "I was hoping to catch you alone," he said, leaning against the bar with an easy confidence that made her stomach flutter. "Oh, really? And why is that?" Emily asked, raising an eyebrow, attempting to maintain her composure. He chuckled softly, his blue eyes sparkling with mischief. "'Cause I find you incredibly intriguing, and I'd like to get to know you better." Emily felt a rush of heat at his words. "You mean after I spilled wine on you and nearly knocked you over?" "Exactly," he said, a playful smirk on his lips. "It's not every day a billionaire gets to be knocked off his feet by a stunning bridesmaid." Emily laughed, feeling the tension ease between them. Well, I could be of service." They shared a moment of comfortable silence, the noise of the party fading into the background as they locked eyes. Emily could see the curiosity in Brian's gaze, and it made her heart race. "So, what's next for you, Brian Fisher? Are you planning to continue saving clumsy bridesmaids at weddings?" He leaned closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "Only if it means getting to spend more time with you." His words sent a shiver down her spine. Emily could feel the chemistry between them intensifying, the air charged with unspoken possibilities. "And what if I say I'm not interested?" she challenged, although deep down she knew that wasn't true. Brian's expression softened. "I'd say you're lying." Before she could respond, the music changed and a slow dance began. "Care to join me?" he asked, extending his hand. Emily hesitated for a moment, her heart racing at the prospect. "Okay, but just one dance," she said, taking his hand. As they moved to the dance floor, the world around them faded away. Brian wrapped his arms around her, and for the first time that night, Emily let herself get lost in the moment. The gentle sway of the dance felt natural, as if they had done this 1,000 times before. "See? Not so bad, right?" he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "Not bad at all," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As they danced, Emily felt a sense of freedom and excitement. The uncertainty that had plagued her earlier began to dissipate, replaced by a growing connection she couldn't ignore. In that moment, she realized that perhaps taking a chance on Brian wasn't such a bad idea after all. But as the song came to an end, reality began to creep back in. Emily pulled away slightly, her heart pounding. "I really should get back to Clara," she said, trying to sound composed. Brian nodded, but the look in his eyes told her he wasn't ready to let go. "Let's not make this the last time we talk, okay?" "Definitely," she promised, feeling a flutter of hope. As they rejoined the party, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. The night was still young, and the possibilities seemed endless. Perhaps this wedding would be the beginning of something incredible. The days that followed the wedding felt like a whirlwind for Emily. She returned to her routine at the construction firm with a new spring in her step, but her thoughts were often consumed by the brief encounters and lingering glances exchanged with Brian. Each time she caught sight of him across the office, her heart would race, and the memory of their dance played in her mind like a favorite song on repeat. As the Richmond Tower project began to heat up, Emily found herself working closely with Brian during meetings. His presence was both exhilarating and unnerving. They debated designs, discussed budgets, and exchanged ideas, but beneath the surface simmered a tension that was impossible to ignore. Brian was undeniably charming when he focused on work, yet the way he looked at her hinted at a deeper interest. One afternoon, as they reviewed plans in the conference room, Emily felt the weight of his gaze on her. "You're deep in thought," he remarked, breaking the silence. "Just trying to figure out how to make this project work," she replied, keeping her tone professional. "I think you underestimate your abilities," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You're doing an outstanding job." Emily felt warmth spread through her at his compliment. "Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that." His expression softened, and for a moment, The atmosphere shifted. You know, it's not just your work that impresses me, he added, his voice low and sincere. She met his gaze, her heart fluttering. What do you mean? You're passionate, dedicated, and it shows. It's refreshing to see someone so committed. Emily felt her cheeks flush. I try my best, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Before she could say more, the door swung open, and Oliver, the firm's director, walked in, breaking the moment. Emily quickly shifted her focus back to the plans on the table, trying to suppress the rush of emotions that Brian's words had stirred within her. After a long day, Emily decided to grab a drink at a nearby cafe to unwind. As she settled into a cozy corner with her coffee, she pulled out her notebook, jotting down ideas for the project. Just as she began to focus, her phone buzzed with a message. It was Brian. Can we talk? I need to discuss something important. Her heart raced at the thought of seeing him again outside of work. She hesitated but then replied, Sure. Where? Meet me at the cafe around the corner in an hour. Emily's mind raced. What could be so important? She finished her drink, trying to calm her nerves before making her way to the cafe. When she arrived, she spotted Brian sitting at a table, looking as composed as ever, yet there was an intensity in his expression that immediately put her on edge. Thanks for coming, he said as she approached. Of course, she replied, taking a seat across from him. What did you want to discuss? Brian sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture that revealed his unease. I've been thinking about us, about what happened at the wedding and the moments we've shared since. Emily's heart raced. Brian, Just let me finish, he interrupted gently. I know we've been trying to keep things professional, but I can't ignore the connection between us anymore. Her breath caught in her throat as she processed his words. I feel it too, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. Then why are we pretending it doesn't exist? Emily hesitated, her mind racing with the implications. It's complicated. We work together, and if things don't work out... If things don't work out, then we handle it like adults, he said, his tone firm yet reassuring. But I don't want to miss out on something great because we're afraid of what might happen. She felt a rush of emotions, fear, excitement, and hope, all tangled together. I want to explore this, but I don't want to jeopardize my career or yours. Brian reached across the table, taking her hand in his. We'll figure it out together. Let's take it one step at a time. Emily looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity in his expression. For the first time, she felt a sense of clarity. Okay, she said softly. Let's see where this goes. A smile spread across Brian's face, lighting up his features. Great. I promise to make it worth your while. As they left the cafe, a sense of excitement filled the air between them. The uncertainty that had hovered over their interactions began to lift, replaced by a burgeoning hope for what lay ahead. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something amazing.